Ambassador Eric Howard stared at the glowing message on his screen. The Galactic Council had called an emergency meeting. This was rare. In 30 years since humans joined the space community, the Council had never asked for humans to attend an emergency session before. Eric rubbed his tired eyes. He had been Earth's main representative for only 2 years. Before that, he worked as a diplomat on Earth. Space politics were much more complex. 27 alien species made up the Council. Some had traveled the stars for thousands of years, before humans even made fire. "What do you think it means?" Eric asked. Susan Miller stood nearby. She had worked with Eric for 15 years. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back tightly, and her face showed worry. "There's no topic listed, no papers sent ahead, just a time and place," she said. "They're breaking normal rules." Eric looked out his window at Earth, a blue dot in the distance. The space station where they worked circled far above the planet. "Get everyone ready," he said. "Tell Captain Frank to prepare the ship for immediate departure." Susan raised her eyebrows. "You think we need military backup?" Eric nodded slowly. "I think we need to be careful." Within 12 hours, their ship, the USS Horizon, left Earth's orbit. The diplomatic team sat in the main meeting room reviewing information about all recent contact with alien species. "Nothing stands out," said Dr. Olivia Bennett, the science advisor. Her dark skin contrasted with her white lab coat. "We've had normal trade meetings with the Vorn, standard cultural exchanges with the Meridians. No conflicts reported anywhere." Eric frowned. Something big enough to call all species together must have happened. "Keep looking." The USS Horizon traveled faster than light for 3 days. When they arrived at the Council headquarters in the Arcturus system, Captain Frank's voice came through the speakers. "Sir, you should see this," he said. "There are hundreds of ships here. I've never seen so many." Eric and Susan hurried to the bridge. Through the front window, they saw ships of all shapes and sizes. Some looked like giant insects. Others resembled crystals or plants. All orbited a massive ring-shaped station. "Whatever is happening, it's serious," Susan whispered. Eric nodded. "Prepare for docking. Full diplomatic uniforms. We represent all of humanity today." 2 hours later, Eric and Susan walked into the Council chamber. It was huge and circular, with seats arranged in rings. Each species had its own section designed for their unique bodies. Humans, being new members, sat in the outer ring. The room hummed with strange sounds. Some species communicated with clicks or light patterns. Translation devices helped everyone understand each other. "The Vorn look upset," Susan said quietly, pointing to the insect-like aliens whose wing cases were vibrating rapidly. "So did the Meridians," Eric noted. The crystal beings were changing colors quickly, a sign of strong emotion. Before they could talk more, the lights dimmed. An alien glided to the center of the room. This was Kaleth, a Thraxian elder. The Thraxians had helped create the Galactic Council thousands of years ago. They looked like tall, thin humanoids with blue skin and no hair. "Representatives of all worlds," Kaleth began, their voice translated into English in Eric's earpiece. "We face a crisis unlike any before. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors detected something strange at the edge of known space. A large hologram appeared above them. It showed what looked like a tear in space itself, a swirling darkness that seemed to eat light. This is not natural," Kaleth continued. "Our scientists confirm it is artificial, made by intelligent beings. It is growing larger. We believe it comes from outside our galaxy." The room filled with worried voices. Eric leaned forward, studying the dark hole with growing concern. "Our calculations show that whatever is making this hole will finish it within 14 days, Kaleth said. "We detect energy signs that suggest a massive force waiting to come through." "An invasion," someone whispered, and the word spread through the room. "We must act together," Kaleth stated firmly. "All our ships must prepare to defend against whatever comes through." The room went quiet as everyone realized how serious this was. Eric thought about Earth's small fleet. Humans had only built 20 large warships. Other species had thousands. "I call for a war council to form now," Caleth said. "Each species will help according to their military strength." Eric and Susan exchanged looks. They knew what that meant. Humans would take orders from the older, more powerful species. It made sense given human inexperience in space, but something about the situation bothered Eric. "Ambassador Howard," Caleth said, looking directly at Eric. "As the newest council member, humanity will play a supporting role. Your ships will follow Thraxian commands." Eric stood up. Council rules required him to acknowledge the assignment. "The council's decision is noted," he said carefully. "However, humans request access to all information about this anomaly before we commit our ships." Surprised murmurs filled the room. New members didn't usually make demands. "This is not a negotiation, Ambassador," Caleth said coldly. "The threat requires immediate action, not human analysis." Eric remained standing. "Nevertheless, we request the data." Caleth's face showed anger, but they nodded stiffly. "Very well. The data will be provided, but do not delay. The fleet gathers in 2 days." As they left the chamber, Susan whispered, "That was bold. Why risk offending them?" Eric walked quickly, his face serious. "Something doesn't feel right. They're rushing to war without proper investigation. That's not how the council usually works." Back on their ship, Eric called his team together. "Dr. Bennett, when we get that data, I want you to analyze everything. Don't just accept their conclusions." Olivia nodded. "You think they're hiding something?" Eric looked out at the stars. "I don't know. But humanity didn't come all this way into space to blindly follow others into war." The data arrived 6 hours later. While Olivia and her team studied it, Eric sent a private message to Earth's government. They needed to be ready for anything. Susan found him later on the observation deck. "What are you thinking, Eric?" He didn't look away from the stars. "I'm thinking that how we respond to this crisis will define humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. And I'm not convinced that following the council blindly is the right choice." "That's dangerous thinking," she warned. "Maybe," Eric agreed. "But rushing to war against an unknown entity might be even more dangerous." The ship's computer announced an incoming call. It was Olivia. "Sir?" she said, her voice excited and worried at the same time. "You need to see this." "The council's conclusion about the anomaly? It's wrong, completely wrong." Eric rushed to the science lab where Olivia and her team worked. Large screens covered the walls showing different views of the space anomaly. Olivia stood in the center, her face lit by the blue glow of holograms. "What did you find?" Eric asked. Olivia pointed to the main screen. "Look at these energy patterns inside the anomaly. If this was a war portal built for invasion, we would see signs of technology, power sources, construction elements. But this," she zoomed in on swirling patterns. "This has organic components. It's growing like a living thing." "You're saying it's not a weapon?" Susan asked, having followed Eric to the lab. "I'm saying it's not what they're telling us," Olivia clarified. "And there's more." She brought up a new display showing wave patterns coming from the anomaly. "These aren't random. They're structured almost like language. And here's the interesting part. They started after the council's probes approached the anomaly, not before." Captain Frank stepped closer to the screen. "Are you saying it's trying to talk to us?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Olivia confirmed. "And the council must know this. Their sensors are much better than ours." Eric's mind raced. Why would they lie about something like this? Susan frowned. Control. Fear of the unknown. Or maybe they know exactly what this is and don't want us to know. "We need more information," Eric decided. "Captain, how quickly can we reach the anomaly?" Frank stood straighter. "If we push the engines beyond safe limits, 30 hours. "Do it," Eric ordered. "And make sure we're not followed." Susan looked alarmed. "Eric, this is almost treason against the council." "No," he replied firmly. "This is making sure humanity isn't led blindly into something we don't understand. Prepare a message to Earth. They need to know what we've found and what we're about." to do. 6 hours later, the USS Horizon slipped away from the Council station. Captain Frank had told Council Traffic Control they were returning to Earth for emergency consultations. By the time anyone realized they were heading in the wrong direction, they would be too far to catch. All systems running above normal capacity, Frank reported from the bridge. We're pushing the engines hard, but they're holding. Eric nodded. Keep going. Every hour matters. For the next day, Olivia and her team studied the data continuously. The more they learned, the more convinced they became that the Council's interpretation was wrong. There's something else strange, Olivia told Eric during a briefing. Look at these historical records the Council included. They show similar anomalies appearing every few thousand years. Each time the Council responded with military force. Did the records say what came through? Eric asked. Olivia shook her head. The data is incomplete, almost like parts were deliberately removed. 28 hours after leaving the Council station, the USS Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The anomaly filled their view screen, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to fold space around itself. No signs of Council vessels. Nearby, Captain Frank reported. But they won't be far behind us. Eric nodded, his eyes fixed on the screen. Dr. Bennett, what exactly are we looking at? Olivia's fingers moved quickly across her controls. It's amazing. The structure is nothing like what we have in our records, but it's definitely not a weapon. I believe it's a doorway. To where? Susan asked. Not where, Olivia corrected. To whom? Those wave patterns I detected, they're getting more complex the closer we get. It's as if it's learning, adapting to our presence. Eric made his decision. Open a communication channel. Broadcast on all frequencies. The bridge crew looked nervous, but Captain Frank gave the order. Channel open, Ambassador. Eric stepped forward. This is Ambassador Eric Howard representing Earth and humanity. We come in peace and wish to talk with you. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then the ship's communication system lit up with a cascade of sounds, musical, rhythmic, and completely alien. It's responding. Olivia exclaimed, the patterns are shifting to match our language structures. Hour after hour, the exchange continued. Olivia and her team worked without rest to establish a translation system, building on patterns and repetitions. Slowly, they began to understand. They call themselves the Convergence, Olivia explained as the translation improved. They're not a single species, but a collective of minds from another galaxy. They've been reaching out across space for thousands of years seeking contact. Why the portal? Eric asked. It's not a portal for physical travel, it's a bridge for minds. They want to share knowledge, culture, art. They're explorers like us. Before they could process this revelation, the ship's sensors sounded an alarm. Council fleet approaching, Frank announced grimly. 7 large ships, weapons ready. They're ordering us to leave immediately. Eric's jaw tightened. Open a channel to the lead vessel. Caleth's face appeared on screen, angry. Ambassador Howard, you have violated Council orders and endangered the entire galaxy with your recklessness. You lied to the Council, Eric replied calmly. This isn't an invasion force. It's a first contact situation and you're treating it as a threat. You understand nothing, Caleth hissed. The Convergence has contacted our galaxy before. They're sharing overwhelmed entire civilizations, erased cultures. We have protected the galaxy from them for thousands of years. By lying? By preparing to attack a peaceful entity? By doing what is necessary, Caleth insisted. Stand down or we will fire upon your ship. Eric turned to his crew. Send all our findings about the Convergence to every Council species, not just to their governments, to their public communication networks, their scientists, everyone. Sir, Captain Frank warned, the Council ships are powering weapons. Do it now, Eric ordered. The truth is our only weapon. Olivia worked rapidly at her station. Transmission ready. Sending. Eric turned back to the screen where Caleth waited. We just shared everything we've learned with every species in the Council. Not just the leaders, all their people. Caleth's face showed shock. You had no right. We had every right, Eric countered. Humanity doesn't believe in hiding truth, out of fear. We've learned that lesson the hard way throughout our history. The sensors beeped again. Sir, Frank said with surprise. 3 of the Council ships are powering down their weapons. They're receiving transmissions from their home worlds. Kaleth's image flickered as they turned to speak to someone off-screen. When they faced Eric, again their expression had changed from anger to caution. This discussion is not over, Ambassador, Kaleth said. The Council demands your return to headquarters immediately. We'll be there, Eric agreed. But first we're going to finish our conversation with the Convergence. Humanity will not turn its back on peaceful contact. As Kaleth's image disappeared, Susan moved to Eric's side. That was incredibly risky, Eric nodded. Sometimes the greatest risk is doing nothing. Now we need to figure out how to communicate with the Convergence without repeating the mistakes of the past. Olivia looked up from her station. I know how. But it will require something the Council never tried. What's that? Eric asked. Asking permission, she said simply. Rather than taking or forcing, we need to establish boundaries. Consent. A true dialogue. Eric smiled slightly. Very human concepts. Maybe that's why we're here, Susan suggested. Maybe the galaxy needed humanity's perspective. The anomaly pulsed with new patterns, as if responding to their conversation. Let's find out, Eric said. Open the channel again. It's time to show the galaxy a better way forward. The next 12 hours aboard the USS Horizon were busy. Olivia and her team worked non-stop to improve their translation system. The Council ships kept their distance but didn't leave. They watched the human ship closely. I've never seen anything like this, Olivia said, looking at the data streaming across her screen. The Convergence learns incredibly fast. They've already adapted their communication patterns to match our language structure. Eric leaned over her shoulder. What have they told us so far? They're a collective of consciousness from a galaxy, 2 million light-years away, Olivia explained. They've been exploring the universe for millions of years, not physically, but through these connection points they create. Like the internet, but across space? Susan suggested. Olivia nodded. Something like that. They seek to connect with other intelligent life, to share knowledge and experience. Then why did their previous contacts go wrong? Eric asked. Olivia's face grew serious. From what I understand, they didn't realize how overwhelming their presence could be. Their minds work differently than ours. When they connected with other species before they shared everything at once, it was too much, too fast. Captain Frank joined them looking worried. The Council is demanding updates every hour. They're getting impatient. Tell them we're making progress, Eric said, and prepare a full report of everything we've learned. We'll need it when we return to the Council. If they let us return, Susan said quietly. We broke a lot of rules, Eric. He nodded. I know, but sometimes rules need to be broken for progress to happen. Olivia suddenly straightened in her chair. They're sending something new. It's an offer. Everyone gathered around her screen. Complex patterns shifted and changed, gradually forming into words and images they could understand. They want to demonstrate a controlled connection, Olivia said, reading the translation. A small exchange of knowledge with built-in limits and safeguards. Is it safe? Susan asked. Olivia looked uncertain. They seem to understand our concerns. They're suggesting just one person make the connection and only for a few minutes. All eyes turned to Eric. He took a deep breath. I'll do it. Sir, that's too risky, Captain Frank objected. As commander of this vessel, I can't allow it. This isn't a military decision, Captain, Eric replied firmly. It's a diplomatic one, and diplomacy sometimes requires personal risk. An hour later, they had prepared a small room for the experiment. Olivia had set up equipment to monitor Eric's vital signs. The rest of the crew watched nervously from outside. The Convergence says they're ready, Olivia reported. They'll open a small connection point for exactly 5 minutes. If anything seems wrong, we'll cut it off immediately. Eric sat in a chair in the center of the room. I'm ready. Olivia sent the signal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small point of swirling energy appeared in front of Eric, no bigger than a baseball. Connection established, Olivia said, watching her instruments carefully. Eric reached out slowly and touched the energy. His body went still. His eyes remained open but seemed to look at something far away. Heart rate elevated but stable, Olivia reported. Brain activity is off the charts but in a controlled pattern. For 5 minutes, no one spoke. They all watched Eric sitting motionless, his hand touching the small portal. Then, exactly on schedule, the energy point disappeared. Eric blinked and took a deep breath. "Are you okay?" Susan asked, rushing to his side. Eric's face showed amazement. "I'm more than okay. That was incredible. They showed me things, Susan. Their home galaxy, their history, their art and science. But carefully, gently. Like showing a child picture books before giving them novels." "No negative effects?" Olivia asked, checking her instruments. "None," Eric confirmed. "They've learned from their mistakes. They understand now that different species need different approaches." "This changes everything," Susan said. Eric nodded. "We need to tell the council. Show them what we've learned." 6 hours later, the USS Horizon docked at the council station. A large security team waited for them. Kaleth stood at the front, their face showing no emotion. "Ambassador Howard, you and your senior staff are summoned to an emergency council session," Kaleth announced. "The rest of your crew will remain on your ship." Eric nodded. "We expected that. We're ready." As they walked through the station, Susan whispered, "They look angry." "Of course they are," Eric replied quietly. "We challenge their authority, but they're also curious. Our transmission to all species created a lot of questions they can't ignore." The council chamber was packed. Representatives from all 27 species watched as Eric, Susan, Olivia, and Captain Frank were led to the center of the room. Kaleth took the main platform. "Ambassador Howard, you have violated council directives, endangered galactic security, and released classified information. These are serious offenses." "We acted in the interest of truth and peaceful contact," Eric replied calmly. "The convergence is not a threat. They are seekers of knowledge and connection, just like us." "You know nothing of them," a Vorn representative clicked angrily. "They have destroyed cultures before." "Because no one tried to understand them," Eric countered. "No one established proper boundaries or communication protocols." He turned to address the entire room. "I have personally connected with the convergence. They showed me their world, their history, their intentions. It was controlled, safe, and enlightening." Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Kaleth looked stunned. "You allowed direct mental contact?" they asked. "I did," Eric confirmed. "And I'm still myself, still human. Because they've learned from past mistakes, they understand now how to share without overwhelming." "This is unprecedented," a Meridian representative said, their crystalline body glowing with interest. Eric nodded. "Exactly. Which is why we need a new approach. Not weapons and fear, but diplomacy and understanding." Kaleth's voice rose. "The Thraxian Protectorate has safeguarded this galaxy for millennia. We decide how to handle extragalactic entities. No single species should make that decision for all others," Eric said firmly. "That's not what the Council stands for." A new voice spoke up. A representative of the Galorn, one of the oldest species after the Thraxians. "Perhaps it is time for a vote," they suggested. "The human evidence is compelling." Kaleth looked around the room, seeing the shifting mood. "Very well. We will hear the human evidence in full, then vote on how to proceed." For the next 3 hours, Olivia presented everything they had learned about the convergence. She showed recordings of the communication, data from Eric's connection experience, and the proposed protocols for safe interaction. When she finished, the chamber was quiet. Then, one by one, representatives began to ask questions. Not hostile questions, but curious ones. How would the connection work? Who would participate? What safeguards would be in place? Eric answered each question patiently. The key difference in our approach is consent and control. No forced connections, no rushing. Each species decides for themselves if and how they wish to interact with the convergence. Finally, Caleth called for the vote. Those in favor of pursuing diplomatic contact with the convergence under human protocols? Lights lit up across the chamber. Green for yes, red for no. The count appeared on the main display. 22 for, 5 against. Caleth's face showed resignation. The council has spoken. A diplomatic mission will be organized with human protocols. Eric nodded respectfully. Thank you. Humanity is honored to help facilitate this historic contact. As they left the chamber, Susan smiled. We did it. We opened the door. Eric corrected. There's still a long way to go. What do you think will happen? Captain Frank asked. Eric looked out a viewport at the stars. I think we're about to begin the most important cultural exchange in galactic history, and I think humanity just proved we belong here, among the stars. 1 week after the council vote, a special team gathered on the USS Horizon. Representatives from 15 species had volunteered to join the first official contact mission with the convergence. Eric led the preparations, working closely with Olivia to ensure everyone understood the safety protocols. Remember, this is entirely voluntary, Eric told the assembled group in the ship's main conference room. Anyone can change their mind at any time. A Meridian representative named Kelsor, whose crystalline body glowed with soft blue light, spoke up. We have studied the human protocols carefully. They are thoughtful, different from how the council has handled things before. Humans are young, but sometimes youth brings fresh perspectives, Eric replied. Caleth had insisted on joining the mission, though they made their doubts clear. I still believe this approach is risky. The Thraxian records show clear dangers. Which is why we're being careful, Eric said. We're not ignoring history, Caleth, we're learning from it. The USS Horizon departed the next day, accompanied by ships from 7 other species. They traveled together to the anomaly, which the convergence had stabilized at Eric's request. It no longer grew or changed, maintaining a fixed size that posed no danger to nearby space. During the journey, Eric worked with each representative to prepare them for contact. The Vorn needed special equipment due to their insect-like nervous systems. The aquatic Nelvari required water tanks with specific minerals. Each species had unique needs, and Eric made sure they were all addressed. The humans are surprisingly thorough, Caleth commented to Susan during a meal. I expected more impulsiveness, Susan smiled. We learned to be careful through our own difficult history. Making mistakes with each other taught us how to avoid making mistakes with others. When they arrived at the anomaly, the convergence greeted them with patterns of light and sound that the translation system now rendered into clear messages of welcome. We are grateful for this opportunity, the convergence communicated. In our past attempts to connect, we caused harm without intention. Your approach offers a new path. Eric established a schedule for individual contacts. Each volunteer would spend 5 minutes in direct connection with the convergence, with full medical monitoring and the ability to end the contact at any time. The Meridian Kelsor went first. When they emerged from the contact room, their crystalline body pulsed with colors no one had seen before. It was beyond description, Kelsor told the others. They showed me star formation from inside the process, the birth of suns, seen from perspectives impossible for physical beings. One by one, representatives made contact. Each returned with similar amazement, describing experiences tailored to their species' interests and perceptions. A Vorn scientist was shown the evolution of insect-like life across multiple galaxies. A Nelvari poet experienced music made from the vibrations of cosmic dust. Caleth observed it all with growing interest. These are not the overwhelming experiences our records described, they admitted. Because the convergence is respecting boundaries, Olivia explained. They're sharing carefully, thoughtfully. It's like the difference between dumping an entire library on someone versus recommending one perfect book. After 3 days of successful contacts, only Caleth had not participated. Eric found them on the observation deck staring at the anomaly. "Still concerned?" Eric asked. Caleth turned slowly. "For thousands of years, my people have protected the galaxy from what we believed was a threat. Our entire culture, our position in the Council, our identity is built on being the Guardians. And now you're wondering if you've been wrong all this time," Eric said gently. "What if we have?" Caleth asked, their voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "What does that make us?" Eric considered his words carefully. "It makes you protectors who did your best with the understanding you had at the time. There's no shame in that. The shame would be refusing to grow when new information comes to light." Caleth was quiet for a long moment. "I will make contact. Tomorrow," they finally said. The next day, the entire diplomatic team gathered outside the contact room. Caleth entered alone, their blue skin looking pale under the lights. 5 minutes passed in tense silence. When Caleth emerged, they moved, slowly as if carrying a great weight. Their eyes looked at each person in the room before finally settling on Eric. "You were right," Caleth said simply, "and we were wrong. For thousands of years we were wrong." A murmur went through the gathered representatives. No one had ever heard a Thraxian elder admit error before. "What did they show you?" Olivia asked. "Our own history," Caleth replied. "The first contact, when my ancestors responded with fear and weapons. The misunderstandings, the lost opportunities." They paused. "And they showed forgiveness, understanding. They hold no anger for what we did." Eric nodded. "Because they understand fear. They understand protection. Those aren't uniquely human or Thraxian concepts." In the days that followed, the diplomatic team developed a formal framework for ongoing contact with the Convergence. Each species would set their own pace and boundaries. Knowledge would be shared gradually, with careful attention to cultural impact. When they returned to the Council station, representatives from all 27 species awaited them. The chamber was filled with anticipation as Eric and Caleth took the central platform together. "The mission was successful beyond our expectations," Eric announced. "We have established peaceful, controlled contact with the Convergence. They offer knowledge and perspective unlike anything we have encountered before." Caleth stepped forward. "For millennia, the Thraxian Protectorate has claimed sole authority in matters of extragalactic contact. Today, I announce that this era is ended." Shocked silence filled the room. Caleth continued, their voice strong and clear. "We propose a new body within the Council, an exchange commission with representatives from all species. No single voice will dominate. All will have equal say in how we engage with the Convergence and any future contacts." A Vorn representative clicked their mandibles in surprise. "This is unprecedented. The Thraxians have never shared power in security matters." "Times change," Caleth replied, "and wisdom lies in changing with them." The vote to create the Exchange Commission was unanimous. As the session ended, representatives gathered around Eric and his team, full of questions and excitement about the new possibilities. Susan found Eric standing alone near a viewport. "You changed the course of galactic history," she said. "How does it feel?" Eric watched the stars. "Like we finally proved humanity belongs here. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because sometimes being new means seeing old problems with fresh eyes." "What happens next?" she asked. "We learn. We grow. We connect," Eric said. "Isn't that what exploration is really about?" As they spoke, ships from dozens of worlds were already departing the station, heading toward the waiting Convergence. A new chapter in galactic history had begun, one written not in fear, but in understanding. 6 months after the first official contact with the Convergence, the Exchange Commission held its inaugural ceremony. The Grand Hall on the Council station was filled with representatives from all 27 species. Eric stood near the central platform, watching as delegates from across the galaxy mingled and talked excitedly about future plans. "I never thought I'd see Thraxians and Vorn sharing drinks," Susan said. joining Eric with a smile. Eric nodded. Amazing what can happen when old fears are set aside. The Exchange Commission had grown rapidly. Every species had appointed their brightest minds to participate. Research teams studied the knowledge shared by the convergence, carefully integrating it with existing science and technology. Cultural experts ensured that new ideas were introduced gradually, respecting the unique values of each civilization. Kaleth approached them, looking different than they had 6 months ago. The rigid posture of the Thraxian elder had softened. They wore the new symbol of the Exchange Commission, a simple circle of stars alongside their traditional protectorate insignia. Ambassador Howard, Kaleth greeted them. Earth's new representatives arrive tomorrow. Have you prepared them? Eric smiled. As much as anyone can be prepared for something like this, they're good people. They'll continue the work we started. You're really leaving? Kaleth asked. Your government has offered you any position you want. You could lead the human delegation permanently. It's time for fresh perspectives, Eric replied. And I've been away from Earth for 3 years. Now, I miss home. The truth was more complex. In the months since first contact, Eric had made 11 more connections with the convergence. Each time he had glimpsed possibilities that changed his understanding of life, consciousness, and humanity's place in the universe. He needed time to process it all. The ceremony began with speeches from leaders of each species. When it was Eric's turn, he kept his words simple. 6 months ago, we faced what seemed to be a threat. Instead, we found a new beginning. The convergence taught us that differences need not divide us. Different minds, different bodies even, different galaxies. We can still find common ground. He looked around the room. Humanity is young among the stars. We have much to learn. But perhaps our greatest contribution is remembering that sometimes the best response to the unknown isn't fear, it's curiosity, not weapons but words. After the ceremony, Eric walked through the quiet corridors of the station. Tomorrow he would board a ship for Earth, along with Susan and most of the original team. Olivia had chosen to stay, leading a new science division, focused on communication technologies. Eric found himself at the large viewport that faced the direction of the anomaly, though it was too far away to see. A small connection point had been established permanently on the station, allowing controlled access to the convergence. Researchers from all species used it daily. Saying goodbye? Susan asked, finding him there. In a way, Eric replied. Though I think our work here is just beginning. The Council has changed more in 6 months than in the previous 1,000 years, Susan noted. The Thraxians actually listen now instead of just giving orders. Eric smiled. Everyone changes when they realize there's more to learn. A young Thraxian aide approached them. Ambassador Howard, Elder Kaleth requests your presence before you depart. Something urgent has come up. Eric and Susan exchanged concerned glances and followed the aide to the Council's private meeting room. Inside, they found Kaleth with representatives from 5 other species, all looking at a holographic display. What's happening? Eric asked. Kaleth turned to them. The convergence has detected another consciousness reaching toward our galaxy, something different from themselves. The hologram showed a distant section of space where strange energy patterns were forming, not like the convergence's organized, symmetrical patterns, but wild and jagged. Is it a threat? Susan asked. Unknown, Kaleth replied. But the old council would have immediately prepared for war. They looked directly at Eric. We are trying your way first. Eric studied the patterns. You're planning to attempt communication? Yes, Kaleth said. With the convergence's help. They understand this entity better than we do. This is why we formed the Exchange Commission, said a Meridian representative, to face the unknown together with knowledge rather than fear. Eric felt a profound sense of pride. 6 months ago, this same group would have launched fleets without question. Now they sought understanding first. Your ship to Earth leaves in 10 hours, Kaleth said. But we would value your input on this situation before you go. Eric looked at Susan, who nodded slightly. Of course we'll help. What do you need? For the next 8 hours, they worked together, developing a communication approach based on what they had learned from the convergence. The Vorn suggested pattern recognition, Algorithms. The Meridians offered crystalline amplifiers to strengthen signals. Each species contributed their unique knowledge. When they finished, Eric looked around the room at representatives from civilizations spanning the galaxy, working together, learning from each other. "I think this will work," he said. Kaleth nodded. "We will keep you informed of our progress." As Eric finally prepared to board his ship home, Kaleth met him at the docking bay. "You changed everything, Eric Howard," the Thraxian said, using Eric's first name for the first time. "You made us question traditions thousands of years old." "Change isn't always easy," Eric replied, "but sometimes it's necessary." "When you first challenged us in the council chamber, I was furious," Kaleth admitted. "I saw only a young species overstepping its place. And now? Now I understand that your perspective was exactly what we needed." Kaleth extended their hand in the human gesture of farewell that they had learned. "Safe journey home." Eric shook the offered hand. "This isn't an ending, Kaleth. It's just the beginning of a much longer story." As the ship pulled away from the station, Eric watched through the viewport. The station grew smaller, a bright point among the stars. Around it, ships from dozens of worlds came and went, their paths forming a complex dance of cooperation and shared purpose. Susan joined him. "Do you think they'll handle the new contact well?" "I do," Eric said confidently. "They've learned that strength doesn't come from having the biggest weapons or the oldest traditions. It comes from being willing to listen, to learn, and to change." The ship accelerated toward Earth, carrying them home, but Eric knew that the true journey, the one that would carry all intelligent life toward a more connected future, was just beginning. Sometimes the greatest revolutions weren't fought with weapons or won with threats. Sometimes they happened, quietly, when someone simply walked away from old fears and toward new possibilities. No threats, no warnings. Humanity had just ended the meeting and started something far greater.